Welcome to Deep Thinking with Dr. Stephen Stolz. I'm your host, Steve, and today I have a special guest with me, being Frederick Stolz, who, if you hadn't realised already, is my father. And I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to kind of revisit a publication that we did together, really, back in 2009. Yeah, or 2009. And so I thought, why not? Let's revisit the interview that we did. And I'm not going to literally reiterate each individual question and go over each question. That's not really the intent. But with season 2, we're having a bit more of a focus on educational type themes. Mm-hmm. So considering that this publication relates to your body or life's work, I thought this would be an opportunity to kind of follow up on that interview we did. So now, but before we get started, I should need to point out, so this interview will be provided as an audio-visual interview, so it'll be available, that's the video recording via YouTube, and then of course the audio version of this interview will be available via the usual platforms like Spotify and Amazon and so on, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. But we're making an extra effort in season 2 to do more audio-visual type interviews where possible. It's not always possible because a lot of my guests are either interstate or overseas, so that's not always possible. Anyway, so let's get started. I think it's important to provide a little bit of context. So back in 2009, when we did this interview, I asked a series of questions, and this booklet was released around about the same time you retired. So You've been retired for how many years now?
16.
16 years, which has gone pretty quickly, actually, which coincided around about the same time we did this kind of interview. So I'm just flashing in here because I'm also going to make available the PDF version of this. So in the episode descriptor, or in the episode notes, will be a link to the PDF of this for anyone who wants to have a look at it or access it or get some idea about what that interview is that we're referring to. So let's get started. I think the most important question really to ask, and we did have a informal type conversation earlier today just to kind of prepare you, is, look, I think the obvious question to ask is, and I've done all these leadership courses, the university sends me off to do all these leadership courses, and I've done quite a few of them, part of MBAs. They wanted me to do an MBA and all this kind of stuff. And even though I've done these 2 courses, different universities, each time I finish them, I'm always left wondering what leadership is. So the question I have for you is someone who was a headmaster for 30 years. I got that right?
45 years.
Well, what's 30 years then?
Well, I had 15 years at the Balob Teachers College in Lay as principal. Yeah. And then 30 years at the Grace Lutheran College.
Yeah, so I was right. So 30 years at Grace Lutheran College.
That's right.
But 45 years as an educational leader of sorts, which is, by the way, the trendy term right now. Oh, okay. Educational leader.
All right.
Depending, of course, who you ask.
Well, if I should add then I also had before that 3 years as a science subject master. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. All right, let's circle back to my original question. So I genuinely am perplexed after I do all these courses. I'm left wondering what leadership is. So what's leadership mean to you?
It's hard to say. I think it depends a lot on the circumstance. It depends on the group that you are leading, I think. Now, in my situation, I was dealing with fellow professionals, and the ones then that were closest to me was they had various leadership roles within the institution that I was in. So, and I've a variety of institutions, some starting quite small, and then and as time goes on, getting larger and larger. For example, at the Balob Teachers College in Lay, there were 8 of us on the teaching staff when it began. I was there 15 years. By the time I left, we had about 30. When I came down to Grace College, there were 5 of us that started. And then when I left, there were well over 100 teachers, plus other support staff and
Just
so on.
might clarify that Lay being Papua New Guinea and Balob Teachers College was a teachers college for Papua New Guineans who were training to become teachers in their educational system. And they were primary school teachers, which is completely what I forgot. We just were there last year for the anniversary, 50th. 60th, sorry. Not, 60th. I don't know why I thought 50th. Sorry, 60th anniversary. Geez, you'd think I would have remembered that. Yeah. Sorry, I got that one wrong. So 60th anniversary last year. We're all fortunate to be there for that. And I'd completely forgot it was primary. I'd forgotten. Yeah.
Yes, and it was started by the Lutheran Church, and after 4 years, then the Anglican Church became a partner. So it is still a joint Lutheran Anglican institution, but it takes students from all religious denominations. So we had a Catholic and Uniting and others.
Sure.
So
yeah, and then that's obviously in Grace Lutheran College. You were the foundation headmaster, and then obviously retiring after 30 years of service there.
And so, even though it was a Lutheran school run by the Lutheran Church here, we accepted students from all faiths and of no faith, and the teaching staff were Lutheran, but others we had Catholic and Anglican and others.
All right. Now, I'm not going to let you off the hook.
No,
you're avoiding the question that I asked you, which was, what do you think leadership is? And I think it's best for you in answering this is to maybe ground it within education context. So let's maybe think about leadership from an education leadership point of view.
Well, it's hard to put a finger on it, but I think because sometimes you have to be firm and say, well, this is what it's going to be. Other times you have to be consultative and in the end come to a decision that at first you mightn't have been that happy about, but in the end you decide that was the best way to go. I suppose if I learned anything over the years, if I did change my mind, and you must be prepared to change your mind, that's okay, but you have to be able to defend it. Once or twice, I was persuaded to change my mind, but I wasn't happy with it, and I found it, therefore, hard to really defend it. So I think once a decision made, you have to be convinced yourself. Otherwise, how can you really get out and sell it to not only to the other staff members, but also to the outside population? And the other thing too, you don't get it right all the time, obviously. You make mistakes. And I think if you do, once you become aware of it, then you have to change and change.
Sure.
You can't stick with something that's obviously wrong once you know it's wrong.
Right. Well, you must be doing something right if we have 45 years of educational leadership. And I think you made one really good point today, is that you were there for the foundation headmaster for 2 institutions.
Yes.
Which brings a unique skill set. So I might get you to talk to that first. But then secondly, in your second stint as headmaster at Grace Lutheran College, you must have found a way to evolve in order to be relevant for 30 years. So that's 2 questions.
All right. Okay.
So let's start with...
Well, the first one.
Okay, so clearly there's a skill set that you have that works well for a foundation.
All right. Well, the first one, I went from being a subject master from Parkes High School in New South Wales to take up the position of principal at the Balob Teachers College. And the other staff members were all people who had experience in Papua New Guinea. And so I was really the new chum. So I think I had enough sense to realise that I needed to take a lot of notice of what other people had to say, because it's a different culture, there's no question about it. You're moving into a developing country, different languages, everything like that, though we were to teach in English. But to get the feeling of the people, the local people, the students, I really had to rely a lot on the staff. And fortunately, the mission had gone around and picked the best staff they could get. Mm-hmm. So I was really very fortunate there. And the other thing was, new facility, it was a brand new facility, and it was being built for the first year and a half while I was there. So we sort of had to adapt as the year went on with the building going around us. But so, as I say, I was very fortunate to have very experienced staff and to listen to what they had to say. But in the end, once the decisions were made, I was the one that had to promote it and so on like that. When I came down to here in Queensland, my experience had been in New South Wales. So I was coming to Queensland, and there still is differences between states, but at that time the education was probably more different than it might be now. So I had to adapt then to a new situation in a new state. So once again, I was fortunate to be able to have some other staff who had been in Queensland and to lean on those where needed. But it was the same thing. We would have big discussions, and then finally, when decisions were made, it's the same story. The principal, head, whatever title you have, is the one then that has to be able to speak to it and defend it.
Okay. All right. So are you happy with the first part of the answer to the question? I mean, okay, common theme, foundation institutions. Okay, the geographical location was different. Obviously, Papua New Guinea, very different from, say, southeast Queensland. Yeah. Obviously, Australia and Papua New Guinea, different countries. But clearly, there's a common theme here around foundation startups.
Well, I think the leader has to be aware that he or she doesn't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. And that's why you have other staff. And you have to be able to accept that in some areas, your other staff members on a particular issue know more about it than you do. Mm. And so you have to be prepared to listen and I think know what your own strengths are, but know what the strengths of all your other staff members are. Mm, okay. And the trick, I think, is recruiting. In the end, it's the selection of staff is one of the most important things a leader does.
Sure.
And you don't want all yes people, because that doesn't get you anywhere, but you want people that are willing to put their ideas forward, but then, once a decision's been made, willing to go along with it.
Oh, that's tricky.
It is.
It's very tricky.
It is.
You make it sound so simple.
But as a principal, you have to be prepared that you won't get it exactly maybe as you want, but if you can get most of the way you want, well, you're doing well.
Okay. All right, so let's go to my second part of my question. Okay, when you came to Grace Lutheran College, I'm so used to saying GLC, Grace Lutheran College. I might say that accidentally every now and then. But when you came to Grace, you'd obviously been there for 30 years. Now, 30 years is, I would say, and I'd be quite prepared to say that that's quite unusual today in the modern world, at least. So what did you do to evolve to make, like, clearly you would have had to evolve.
Yeah, well, I think what it said, it's right. It is a long time, but every year was really different. When we started, we had 55 students, and then every year it grew and grew and grew. And so you had to adapt to as the school became larger. And then towards the end, my last 2 years, we started a second campus at Caboolture. So we're really then, in many ways, starting another school. Caboolture is about...
You could maybe start 3 schools, Caboolture campus being the third one.
Well, you could say so, but it was... Caboolture is about half an hour away from the main campus. And so I felt I needed to stay the first 2 years at least to see it started.
Yeah, sure.
So that's...
so even as you're close to retirement, you started technically another campus or school, depending on how you want to look at it, of course.
In a way it was that, but it had the big advantage that a lot of the rules, regulations and so on were already there, so you didn't have to go through all that. And you had heads of department, experienced heads of department at the main campus that could help out and so on.
Sure.
So that helped a lot, but it was still the same situation that you didn't have large numbers. And my feeling is in a secondary school, until you have about 400 students, it's always difficult to have the number of courses you'd want and everything like that.
Yep.
So I've been through that experience where you have to be able to adapt to the situation. And that's one of the reasons I said 30 years might be a long time, but every year was really different.
In the modern world, it would be.
Yeah.
Because I guess my next question on that is, like, how did you, like 30 years would have, I know as we talk about it objectively now that you're in retirement, back then it wouldn't have felt necessarily like 30 years, but
No,
how did you, like, I guess the logical question is, how did you survive the 30 years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a very intense, demanding role.
Yeah.
So how did... You can answer that however you like here, by the way. How did you survive 30 years?
I think I tried to do it while I was at school, and I would work pretty long hours and, nights and so on. That was it. But when I went home, I tried not to take the work home. Now, I was very strong that I would always have a class, so I always had a class until the last 2 years. So sometimes I would have some marking to do at home, and sometimes I might have a bit of preparation to do at home. But by and large, I felt once I left the school, I should leave the school. I didn't encourage anyone to ring me when I was home, and I tried not to ring anyone either when I was home. But I mean, that's just me. I'm not saying how other people would work. And
well, I think you're underselling the intensity, how intense a role it is. I would have seen it firsthand, and there's a lot of people who don't realise how many hours you gave to the job. And it was really 6, sometimes 7 days a week, 12 plus hours, and it was irregular hours too. So that's why I guess I asked the question of how you survive 30 years.
All right. Well, I think there's no doubt, unless you put your heart and soul into it, then, I mean, you probably will find it hard to succeed. But I mean, I really enjoyed it, I must say. I enjoyed the students, even not the difficult ones, maybe not so much, but it was so good to be around young people, hear what their desires, what they want to do when they leave school and so on like that. And the other thing, the teachers are intelligent people, and it was an environment, very, very stimulating environment, because you're dealing with a lot of very other intelligent people.
Sure.
I found a very stimulating environment.
Sure.
It really was.
Okay.
So I enjoyed it, I have to say.
Sure.
So.
But all right, so let's get drill down on this a little bit more, because I'm not ready to move on just yet. I'm going to drill down a bit. So how did you personally get through it? Because today we know more about burnout, which is a relatively new phenomenon, and I've done some episodes on that from season 1, and I've experienced burnout myself, on and off. Now that's a term that we've given to it today. But how did you avoid what we would call burnout today. You know what I mean? Like in the past, they would have called that overworking, not taking breaks. I don't know what term they would have used.
Well,
what language would they have used back then?
Well, I did take the holiday. I mean, Christmas holiday, we'd always went away for a couple of weeks or more. And on the term breaks, I would take some days off, but I would also do interviews during the holidays, but I wouldn't do the whole day. I might go out, say there's 5 days, say for 2 or 3 days I would do interviews for the following year, and I wouldn't go the whole day. I might say, all right, I'll do about 6 interviews, and that might take, about 3 hours or something, and then that was it. So I think it's important that you do have other...
Sorry, just clarify, what do you mean by interviews? Potential parents.
Yeah, potential
parents.
Yeah, I would, until really at the end, I basically interviewed every new student coming in. Okay. Later on, when the second campus sort of on, we divided it a bit. But that's pretty well what I would do. And so once the school was up and running, they would start doing interviews for the following year. And each interview would take maybe 20 minutes to half an hour.
Sure. Without mentioning names, when you're interviewing potential parents and or families, if you like, or children, were there any that you said, no, this is not a good fit, I don't think this is going to work? Don't mention names, of course. You're not allowed to say.
Well, there was a period when we were getting more applicants than we had spots. That was a bit hard. But then I managed to persuade our committee to increase our numbers.
Sure.
So I'm not saying, therefore, everyone that applied were able to give a position, but we were trying to grow the school, you see. And when I left, I mean, we had 1,500 students. So, and I was very keen that Grace was a school for all students.
Sure.
I mean, we were not to be a grammar school. We were to be a school for all students. And so even with students with some disabilities, we took those. We took students sometimes that were, dare I say it, not sure what the modern term is, but found academics learning not easy. I don't know what the right word is now.
Oh, maybe we could use a euphemism and say they were academically challenged, maybe?
Well, whatever the word you want. But I felt we're a Christian school. We're here. The reason the school was set up is because the Lutherans and all churches really believe that a proper education, there needs to be a spiritual dimension.
Sure. Yeah.
Spiritual dimension to
it. I think as a Grace Lutheran provided that, without a doubt.
Yeah. And the other thing, say a family has 2 or 3 or 4 children, you'll see it. Sometimes 2 or 3 of them are quite academic, and then one's not so academic. Well, we didn't want to be in the situation, say, all right, we'll take those 3 and the other one, no, you can't, you have to go somewhere else. So, I mean, that brings its issues as well, because it means some of those students need more staffing, and if they are real struggling, maybe a smaller grouping and so on like that.
Yeah, sure.
So there's a cost to it, but I was firmly of the view, and I think the Lutheran Church still holds that we're here for everyone as best we can.
Sure. I won't keep pressing you on if there were students who you couldn't take on, because logically there'd be an instance of probably poor fit, but don't answer that. No. So if you're mainly accepting the majority, so let's just say you're accepting the majority of students that are applying, then what was the purpose behind the interviews then? If you're like, why not just do an application like most schools today and then pay your administrative fee for processing, and then if there's numbers, so be it. Like, so what was the benefit of the face-to-face interview?
Well, first to meet the student, and I used to ask them, what were they thinking of doing when they I had a variety of questions. I can't remember them all now, but more a get to know you thing. And often I'd end up having quite a conversation with the parents because there are some very interesting parents that would come in from different occupations, and so we would discuss round about, and I would try to make clear to the parents that there was a Christian school they were coming for. We had good documentation, which we'd make sure everyone saw, which said, what our intentions were, that we were a school that we were open to regardless of income or race or religion.
Was it like a disclaimer written by a lawyer? These days, most of them are written by lawyers.
Well, it might have been. I'm not. I'm not saying that. But what we wanted to make clear is that there were expectations. Christian studies was compulsory.
Okay,
had to be
sure.
compulsory. There would be chapel services from time to time. Students were expected to go to to attend and so on like
Wear a
that.
uniform.
And there was a uniform that was expected to be worn, and so on like that. And I think we had publications were pretty clear. They weren't 50 pages, but I think it was setting out pretty well. If you come to Grace, this is what you're going to get. And for some of them, well, that's not what we want. That's fair enough. But the other thing we were very keen to try and make, regardless of whether, some people might have felt, well, they could manage the fees. If need be, we were willing to discuss, what.
Sure.
What so.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But so, and all these things, I was very fortunate too. We had a very good college council and a very good chairman, and it's very important I think in any system, because you always have a board or something or other, and the chair of that board and the CEO, whatever title you want, there has to be a good relationship of trust. I think trust is the word. Trust between the CEO or principal
of the college council
and the chair of it. And if that trust gets broken, it's very difficult to get it back again.
Sure. All right. Now, I want to keep coming back a bit more to leadership a bit.
Yes.
Before we move on to our next series of questions I have planned.
Yeah.
So, obviously now we have this years of experience. Are there anyone who's listening who are maybe educational leaders now or want to be a potential educational leader? What bits of advice would you give them if they are either in a kind of leadership role or want to be an aspiring leader in a school, or this can be anything you want it to be, by the way.
Well, I think there can be a misconception that, if you get promoted, you won't have to work as hard. No, it goes the other way. As you go up the ladder, you work harder. That might sound back to front. But when I say harder, you have to be prepared to put in whatever the time is. And there are times during any year where you have to put in a lot of hours, and there are other times where you don't have to do it, but you have to be prepared that there are going to be times where you're going to have to put in long hours.
Sure.
And I think that
most of the time you're getting remunerated for it too, so
yes,
a little bit extra.
Yes, you do.
So it's not like you're just getting your normal teacher salary.
No.
Yep.
But I guess what I'm saying, it's no good saying, I'd start at 9, finish at 3, and that's it. No, that's not.
Sure.
If you're a leader, that's a guide. That's all it is.
Yeah, sure.
That's a guide.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be committed to the institution and what it is that you're doing, really. And then the motivation is there, and you always should be looking, how can I do it better than last time? And always, you can never say, you're 100%. You're always striving. That's what I would say.
Yeah, sure.
It's never. You can never say I've got it. The moment you say you've got it, it's probably time to retire, because you have to have new ideas and be able to adapt to new circumstances. But that's what makes it very interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Makes it very interesting, I have to say so. Yeah, it's never boring, I can say that.
Yeah, sure. All right, so some of the really good leadership courses I've been is that I am mentored by someone experienced, and then I mentor someone junior to me. So who mentored you, and then who have you mentored? By the way, probably best not to mention names, unless you want to.
No.
Who helped cultivate your leadership? Let's start there. Who helped cultivate your leadership and mentor you? Today they call it coaching, mentoring or coaching. That's the trendy terms. Coaching. Did you have anyone?
I'm just trying to think, really. I don't know that I had anyone set to do it, but that didn't mean that I didn't.
Maybe it was someone informal. Today it's more of a formal arrangement. You would meet frequently and discuss sorts of different things as part of it.
And I did.
That's more of a lot of these programs today they're very formal, formally organised. You probably wouldn't have had anything formal.
They didn't though, and then I did. I know I did do some help out of someone. I won't say who it was.
Where you mentored someone?
I don't know whether we necessarily use the term mentor, but I went out. I used to go out, meet that particular person. I know a couple of times a year. I did that for I know now a bit, but I don't know that I could point to someone, say, was a mentor for me specifically. I think they formalise that more now.
Oh, that's a very formal part of most programs.
Yeah.
Well, let's just move on to my next question. If you can think of something, maybe we can come back to it. But do you think that leaders are born, or can they be cultivated into good leaders?
Yeah. I think you have to say they can be cultivated because, yes, I remember reading what they call the Peter Principle, that you get promoted to your level of incompetence.
Yeah, I know all about that.
And
I work at university. What more can I say?
All right, okay. All right. But I think you have to know your own strengths and weaknesses. And I suppose when I came into education, it was always my desire, I guess, to be a principal or a headmaster, whatever title you want. But I had no desire to go any further. I'm not a great writer. I'm not a great orator. I'm not a good person in an office, what that is. So that was my goal. And so when I became a principal, and that didn't mean, all right, now I can sit, but that I wasn't looking to, all right, how can I go to a higher, if you can call a higher level. I had no interest at all in any role away from that. It was I did have no desire to go on to some higher, whatever, or another administrative level.
Yeah, sure.
So that's all I'm saying. So I think you have to be honest, do a strong self-analysis of what realistically, and we know what we can not do reasonably well, but we also know what we're not very good at.
Yeah, well, that's one of the first things they make you do in these courses now.
I'm sure, yeah.
You do all these psychometric tests
I'm sure.
to work out your strengths and weaknesses.
And I think that's right. And the secret is, like in anything, maximise your strengths and try and minimise your weaknesses. Because we all have weaknesses. Every single one of us, doesn't matter who it is. So we all have weaknesses. But you try to make sure that your strengths are greater than your weaknesses. That's really what it comes to.
Sure.
And And I've seen it myself where someone was, say, a leader at one institution and sort of didn't do that well, but then moved to another one and did really well. But I've also seen the reverse, where they were doing very well at one and then moved to another and not so well. Different circumstance.
Sure.
So it's I know horses for courses really, but what I'm getting at is each situation is somewhat different. And I know in the Lutheran system, which is the one I know best, and I look at and I know the Queensland ones best, and I look at them, and some of them look at it and I said, it'd be no good my going there. I wouldn't be any good in that situation. And I could look at some like, yeah, I'll be okay there. So no, you have to be really realistic about your own strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
And you can learn. You can learn. I know when I went to Balob that first year being green, I made a couple of, fortunately not terrible, but they were slip-ups. But the deputy with a long experienced missionary been there and he bailed me out beautifully. And I learned from it. So that's going to happen.
Sure.
And then but this was a little bit annoying on my last year when you think, oh, I know how to select staff and so on. And I made 2 staff appointments. I thought they were good. One lasted a term, the other one a term and a half. So what I'm saying, staff selection is crucial, and it's always you do it with a little bit of fear and trembling.
Sure, I mean, it's not an accurate science.
It's not.
Yeah.
You can try every scheme you want. You don't quite know how it will go.
Yeah.
That's all. So what we tend to do, when like as Grace got bigger, I mean, we're going to have positions would come, and we would advertise them, but unless someone came from outside, we tended to stay with people we knew.
Sure, which is understandable.
Which knew. And that worked well because we knew what their strengths were and what wasn't their strengths.
Sure. So one thing you neglected to mention is that you had completed your MEd.
Yeah.
Now, as part of your MEd, you would have had some structural preparation for educational leadership of some kind, surely. It was Concordia in Chicago, the United States.
Yes, yes.
Which I visited.
Yes, you are correct. I did.
Yeah.
I did a number of courses and, a couple of them.
Which is a form of preparation.
Yes. I'd been, when I went there, that was, at that time, I'd been a principal, 74. I'd been a principal about 10 years, I suppose.
Yeah, so it was 1 or 2 years in Chicago?
A year. And I did quite a variety. And I did, yes, there were some, I mean, they might not specifically said leadership, but they certainly all helped.
Yeah, okay.
And that I appreciated that year because it gave me a chance to sort of sit back and do a fair, do a fair bit of reading and so on like that.
Well, that's the main benefit of why it would be an expectation that you would have some postgrad qualification. MEd being an obvious example because it helps you formulate a lot of your ideas.
It did. It was good. And some I came back and tried. Some worked, some maybe not as well as I thought.
Yep.
So then when I came down to here, being in the mission, everyone came. They came from different countries, but everyone sort of felt that they had to have an opportunity to say a few things.
Yeah, sure.
And see, before I would say, and I don't say this in a bad way, I was 9 years in the New South Wales Education Department, and I had a very good 9 years. But they were the days when principals perhaps were more autocratic in a way. It was a sort of, it didn't mean they didn't talk to staff members, but it was sort of, they made often the decisions, and they were generally quite good decisions. So, but the mission sort of taught me perhaps to try to bring in other staff more along the way. That was all.
Collaborative.
More collaborative. So I would think from that, I learned, I think, from that to be more collaborative. But no matter how you do it, if you are the leader, in the end, you have to take the responsibility. When things go wrong, even if it was one of your subordinates, you have to take the blame because you appointed them. But you have to take. You can't. There's nothing worse than getting up and saying, "Oh, it's not me, it's them." No, you're responsible. That's it.
Sure. So the MED of sorts was a foundation. So that is some
helped.
prep.
Oh yeah.
I would call that personally preparation of sorts.
It was.
That's a good stepping stone.
And it was. And I mean, I appreciated it, no doubt. It was a brilliant year. I mean, I learned a lot, and I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to do that. And I think when I did come down to Grace, it helped me in many ways to know how I wanted to go, how things to go.
Sure. Well, that was an important addition, I think. Yeah. The Concordia University.
Yes.
I think that's an important thing to add.
Yeah, and I think if you are aspiring to leadership, definitely where there are courses that
there's plenty. I teach into the MEd.
Yeah.
I want to advocate for postgraduate study, not just because I teach in the MEd, but because I know it really does prepare, teachers for educational leadership.
Yeah, and I think that before you'd have that sort of a trial and error, but if you do that, it does better prepare. I'm not disputing that at all. So as I said, definitely. If you're looking to take leadership roles, and I'm thinking like head of a school or to have taken some courses along the way of leadership, definitely.
Yeah, most schools pay, someone who either wants to or aspires to or currently in a kind of leadership role to do a course.
Absolutely.
We've got all sorts of arrangements with schools and so on and so forth.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
But it's like a lot of things. You can do all this and there's still no guarantees.
Of course.
Because when the biggest jump, say you can be a very good deputy principal, really good, but when it comes to being a principal, say, well, that should be, it's not, because the big thing is, up to that time, there's always someone above you that it's going to take the responsibility. But when you are the principal, you're it.
Sure.
You're it.
Yeah.
You can't suddenly say it's someone else.
Yeah. All right, so before I move on to my next series of questions, so what other tips or advice you would give aspiring, kind of teachers who want to be educational leaders or those who are in leadership positions?
All right.
Now?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes I notice when looking around is I'll use the word principal, meaning leader, but I'll say something. Yeah. They
have all terms now. We've got CEOs.
Yeah, all right. they try to micromanage too much. You have to trust the different staff that you've appointed. You've got to know what they're doing, but you have to trust and let them get on with their that's what you hired them for. So there's no point hiring them and then trying to do their job for them. In other words, they need to know what their role is, but then you have to let them get on with doing the role. And I'm not saying, don't interfere, because you need to be kept informed, but it's trust.
Yeah, sure.
I can't think of another word that you can use, is trust. And sometimes, let's face it, we're all human. Sometimes you put trust and it doesn't work. Well, okay, then you have to deal with that. That's part of leadership. And you have to make up your mind, well, can this be repaired or can't it? Or depends what the issue is that you're talking about. But it comes down to trust. And letting the larger the organisation, the more you've got different people, lieutenants, whatever you want to call them, you have more people with different roles, and you have to let them do their role. Nothing annoys people more if they're doing their role and doing it okay, and then the person above them comes in and sort of certainly can say, look, I think we'd like to concentrate a bit more in another direction. That's a different thing. That's fair enough. But if they're doing everything the way I found, if they're doing it not quite the way I might have done it, but successful, okay, providing it's ethical. I mean, that's always whatever we're dealing with.
Sure.
It has to be ethical. And the same I used to see with teaching styles. Different people, different teaching styles and so on. The proof of the pudding is how it goes over. And if they were getting the results, again, if it was ethical, okay.
Sure.
But I think that's often the issue where, and you can see it in politics too, with prime ministers, some prime ministers, they try to micromanage and they run into trouble every day.
Oh, yeah,
of
of course. I mean,
it's
all right. Let's finish with one more and we'll move on.
Yeah.
What one other tip or a bit of advice you would give?
Well, I think if you're in charge, you've got to be seen.
Okay.
You've got to be seen. We call it management by walking around.
They call it visible leadership.
Well,
they
right.
got even a special name for it.
All right. Well,
visible leadership.
Well, we used to call it management by walking around. But if you sit and think people will come and tell you their issues, they won't. So if you want to find out what's going on, you have to walk around, and then as you discuss and so on, then it might come up and you can see. Then you can see what it is. So in other words, sit in your office. You can think everything's perfect, but really you need to be up and about and be seen.
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very strong on that one.
Sure.
You'd have to be seen.
Okay. All right. So you were very popular. I mean, like I've got this figurine here. I'm going to hold it up for those who can see it. You can you see a picture, and it says here, "The world's greatest headmaster." The figurine. I don't know if it's kind of lifelike or not, but it's for those who are listening, it's a figurine of sorts, and that's what it says at the bottom of the plaque. Yeah. We're sitting in front of a shrine here of all the stuff that you've been given. Yeah. But clearly, the shrine here clearly says you are popular. So what would account for the popularity? What's the secret? Special sauce here?
I don't know. It's very, very humbling. I don't know I don't know why. Honestly,
okay.
I don't know.
Well, no, I think you do know, but
no, I'm pleasantly surprised, I must say, but
you would have some inkling or some insight, surely, about what could bring some of this adoration about?
Well, I think I tried to let staff know that I appreciated what they were doing.
There you go, straight away. There, you answered the question straight up there.
Yeah, but
you sound like I interrupted you. You sound like you got more there, though.
Well, I mean, perhaps I needed to do more than I did do, but I don't know. I'm not sure actually why, but no, I really, I think it's a lot of it. I know myself where I perhaps didn't do things as well as I should have, but anyway, it's very humbling. That's all.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, I mean. Some of it you alluded to before, being a visible leader, what they call visible leadership today, but walking around and talking to everyone.
Yeah,
so, surely you would know that that's part of the mix here. I mean, you would talk to everyone from the groundsman to the bus driver to the head of different departments through to I mean, so
that's right.
Surely that you would know that's part of the mix here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important because, all right, it's not only the teachers, the support staff, very critical, and I always try to
and
let
students
them know.
too. I shouldn't neglect the students too. Let's not neglect the students.
No, but all right, taking the people that are working in the institution, that they're all important. In fact, I remember my she called herself my secretary. They call them PAs, principal assistants now. But
PAs today.
But she went to something, came back and said, in many ways, the most important person in your institution is the receptionist, because they're the first person that people see.
When they call the school as well.
When they call the school. Yeah. And I thought that made a lot of sense, because that's right. They're the first person when you ring or when they come in the front door, you smile, are you helpful, or you're too busy along here, and then after about 5 minutes, oh, you want something?
Sure.
And we were fortunate, and my one who became my BA for the last 15 years, she was on reception for several years, and she was absolutely brilliant for that.
Do you want to mention her name?
Oh, Louise Farr.
Louise Farr, there you go.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that's appropriate. We can mention her name.
And so, and it's it's, and to be welcoming to anyone that comes in as far as you possibly can be, because we're a very labour-intensive occupation, teaching. For years I've been saying, we don't need TV, we're going to do it all online, we're going to do it on TV, we're going to do so on. Yes, you can do some things, but you can't. The people want that personal contact.
Sure. We'll save that one for later. I have a question about technology in a minute.
Right.
But
so it's to be a welcoming place. We put a lot of effort in. Any new student that came in, that we would get a couple of students to be with them in the first week or so to make sure we get taken around, meet others and so on like that. So the whole effort was to do that. And same with staff, new staff, particularly to see that they were able to be, I tried, particularly it got a bit harder when the school got bigger, but tried to meet with the new staff fairly soon just to see how things were going, more just to how they're not sort of get too detailed.
Sure.
But I still think it's just to be around and about and greet people and so on. Sure. I think it's, but I don't know. I'm very humbled to hear that, but
sure,
that's all I can say.
So I got to ask you a question around trends in education, and obviously a big trend at the moment is digital technology or technology in general. Obviously, artificial intelligence or AI is quite a significant kind of player at the moment in all educational institutions in general. But what are your thoughts? You would have started out by seeing calculators and then you would have seen laptops.
Yes.
So you've seen it all so far. So is this just like another trend which will come and go, or what do you think?
Well, I have to say I'm not very well up on AI.
That's okay.
To be frank, my concern's a bit different to that. My concern is teachers are being overloaded with paperwork. Now, that would be okay if the paperwork was helpful to make them do their job better. But a lot of it is just, quite honestly, and this might be being, you could cut out half of it and no one would know the difference.
Sure.
So what it's doing, teachers are being overworked completely with paperwork, stopping them from their task of preparing to do the best lesson they can in front of the class. And as a result, it's not the only reason, a lot of teachers are suffering burnout. And the annoying thing to me is, whenever it's asked, everyone, doesn't matter whether they're in the private system, the state system, the Catholic system, any system you like, the unions, everyone is saying there's too much paperwork for the teachers. Everyone. And yet, what happens? More paperwork, not less.
Sure.
Now, if the government wants all this, then they need to staff the school and put a lot extra staff on to do some of this paperwork so the teachers can do their job. It's a bit like in a hospital. If you've got the surgeons and others and you had them spending all their time on paperwork and not doing operating, it seems like, what's the sense of that? Well, I see a lot of it with the teachers. They're doing a lot of, I'll say,
I'll
unnecessary...
call it the administrative tasks.
Well, all right.
Yeah. But, I mean...
Some are necessary, but some...
Yeah, because my response back to that is a lot of it is around a governance and compliance thing.
I agree.
And we have all these different kind of government agencies that force this compliance on us.
I understand that.
And so this is what educational systems wanted. This is what teachers, this is what educational leaders wanted. So, you see, this is where it gets really tricky now, is that, yes, it's reported quite frequently across the sector from, kind of educational leaders through to teachers and parents and so on. However, it's also the same thing that they want. There's big talk around accountability.
Yes.
This is the accountability drive.
All right. Okay. Well, if governments want that, then they have to put on extra staff to help the teachers do it. It was... we tried where we could to have support staff to help teachers do like the typing and doing running off and do those sorts of things so they could concentrate on.
Sure.
I wanted teachers to have time to prepare their lessons and to do that.
Sure.
So all right, if you want to put other administrative things, all right, then give extra staff to help to do that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. It's just unfortunate that the complexity of the governance and regulatory requirements are becoming more and more complicated, and it's layer upon layer upon layer. Yeah. It would take us too long for us to even talk about this. We don't want to spend this whole interview talking about this, but yes, that is reported by everyone, that the administrative burdens, that's what you're talking about.
Well, you asked me, friend.
Yeah.
Now, you asked for the AI, but I'm not, AI doesn't, these other trends are overloading the teachers, and that's what they're all saying.
Sure.
So, and what's the result? It's not the only result, the only reason, but a number of saying enough's enough, I'm going to go and do something else. And
well, you mentioned AI. Well, AI might be able to step in and do a lot of it for us.
That's what I'm told, and that might help. That might help. So that might be a plus. I hope so, because I want... I employ teachers to teach maths or whatever it is, and I thought our job was to try and give every support to that teacher that they could do maths, chemistry, English, German, not the best support possible to do that. And that's what I'm saying, and I'm getting the feeling that that support isn't there. I know finances come in, governments are under pressure, but if you want to put on these extra load, all right, then you need to give more support staff.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying.
Workload is a perennial issue, right?
Yeah, I know.
And it's in a very hard basket.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and we could talk about this ad nauseum, and I don't want to get bogged down on the debate around workloads, but inevitably it turns to the question of workload, right?
Yes, it does. Yes.
How do we then alleviate some of these administrative tasks?
That's right.
In order to free up preparation for lessons and marking, assessment, so on and so forth. So I don't think anyone's debating that. Then the question inevitably comes back to the pragmatics of, look, how can we significantly tackle this when it comes to workload?
Yeah.
And at the moment, where there's a bit of an impasse, right, because of how workload's done. So let's not get into the technicalities here, because this is just this.
But you asked me trends.
Yeah. No, it is a trend.
And probably the other trend, which is disturbing, is behaviour. And I've seen, I don't always believe this, but I've seen statements that's ranking Australia against other countries, and we're way down near the bottom of behaviour of our students. Down near the bottom.
Like league tables and stuff like that on behaviour. Yeah, but what I always say, you take that with a grain of salt, because it depends on what metric they're using and what questionnaire and how they assess it.
At the same time, I keep reading in the paper how teachers are being assaulted, how they're being sworn at, how they're even being physically attacked. Now, that, I'm not saying that never happened, but it certainly was when I started teaching.
It was certainly a rarity, that's for sure.
It was very rare. Even the worst student that, when I was as a student, would never have sworn at the teacher, wouldn't even have entered his or her mind, no matter how big a rascal he was. You see, that's what. So that, if you want me, I'd say there's two trends that are worrying. One is the paperwork, and two, student behaviour.
Sure.
That's all you want. You asked me about trends.
No, you're right. I am. But I just,
And that's what I'm saying. They're the trends that I see. I hope it might be able to help. I hope, but they're the trends that I'm seeing. Now I know we hear league tables, but you can't ignore them altogether. But
this business around behaviour, though, I mean, I want to ask you a bit of a challenging question on that. I mean, sometimes that's just a bit of media hype. So I guess, like, are kids really that much different today than 10, 20, 30 years ago?
All right,
that is a legitimate question, because it's a devil's advocate type question. But I guess what I'm...
All right,
you've had 50 plus years in the teaching space, and so you really are in a very unique position to say, look, kids are still kids up to a point.
I agree.
And so have things changed that much, really?
Well, all I can say, okay, I better not say too much, but there's a friend of mine, outstanding teacher. I better be careful how I say this.
Maybe you should introduce this to the interview.
No, but I just... She was at a primary school. She was attacked so much now that she's not going to continue teaching. Yeah,
and unfortunately, this is a very common occurrence. Yeah, it's very common.
And this was I can say this was by a primary student.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is becoming more and more common.
Yeah, and that's what I'm worried about. Yeah. Now, what's happening is the trend is then for people that can afford it, they're looking to may go to Catholic schools or Lutheran schools or other independent Christian schools or what have you. And I mean, okay, I've been in the private system for 30 years, and you say, oh, that's good, but whether that's necessarily good for the country, I'm not so sure, because we want a good education system, which, by the way, I've been to overseas countries as well. We do have a very good education system. So I've got to be positive. Yeah, I would agree. We do have a very good education. Don't get me wrong. But this is, I was asked about trends. And
Correct,
And this is the trend.
And you are right about the trend from public to private.
But not only that, but the trend to have that. I'm not sure that overall it's is necessarily a good trend. I mean, it's good from the private system, naturally, but you have to say, is it necessary?
You'd want to drill down on why there's the shift towards independent / private schools.
Yeah, that's right.
And then if you start drilling down on that, then you can understand why that then is problematic for the public education system, because generally there are legitimate reasons why there's a shift in that direction.
I know. But see, I'm a product of the public system. Albury High, I'm going to give it the plug. I was there. I was vice captain. very happy with the education I received. And I went to a little one-teacher school. I mean, that's always a bit problematic, but I mean, I managed to get a bursary to go to Albury High, so I can't complain.
Sure.
And then I went to the University of Sydney, University of New England. I'm happy with those places as well.
I'd want to hope so. University of Sydney's still one of the top universities in Australia.
Exactly. So what I'm saying, I don't want to be sounding, how terrible, but I'm saying I want to see where things can be. Everything, you can always do things better, and that's all I'm making the point. Sure. That's my only point. I've been overseas. I've seen school systems elsewhere. We are very fortunate. Yep. We do have a very good system, and it doesn't matter whether Labor are in, Liberal in, or whoever's in, they make a great effort to try and see that every student gets a chance to have education. Sure. Yeah. So we're very fortunate.
Yeah, no, agreed.
So I just want to say I'm a great advocate for Australian education, but I'm also mindful where they can do better.
Yeah, of course.
That's all I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah.
You asked me the question. They're the two trends I see.
Well, your response was kind of three broad ones. Yeah. One was administrative burdens have obviously increased for a range of complex reasons. Yeah. The second one was around whatever metric you want to use was a perception around behaviours, student behaviours in schools, whatever the perceptions are, whether they're good or bad or accurate or inaccurate, whatever. So that is a common perception out there. Yeah. And then the third one you were just talking about, kind of educational systems like Australia. I still think across the board is consistently, it is consistent. So I could take my child if I live in Brisbane and go to Perth, and I would still say it's relatively comparable.
Yes.
And I would say, and then if you went to, say, Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide, I would say it is relatively comparable. You're going to have some variation, but I would always say that is the true test. Yeah. And as someone who has moved interstate a fair bit myself with kids, I know that that is comparably pretty solid. Yeah. You're going to have some variation, of course, but
And what I see is when Australian graduates, university graduates go overseas, they get a job straight away.
Yes, depending on what era. I'm not so but I'm not someone who obviously is an academic in a university. Things have changed a little bit. But anyway, let's not go there.
All I'm saying,
but you are right.
I don't want it to come over as though I'm a negative to the education system.
No, you won't.
We are very blessed with our education system. That's all. Yeah. All I want to see is you can always do better. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I think I don't care what school you're in, you always have to have the view, how can we do it better?
Yeah, of course. I understand. Yeah. All right. 2 questions left.
All right.
So my second last question I always ask my guests is name 3 books. You can't think of 3, it doesn't matter. But think of 3 books that you would recommend and why.
Yes, I'm 16 years out of it, so I can't. But I would say certainly the various and I don't know what the various educational journals are now, but I think you need to keep an eye on those. I think that's
there's a whole plethora of them. It just depends on what you want to.
So you need
kind of research.
I think you need to pick those that with him, and. If you're in aspiring for leadership in any Christian school, Lutheran, Catholic, whatever, Greg Sheridan is my recommendation. Sure. Yeah. He's written 3 recent books, and they, to my mind, he's a very good writer and about the contemporary situation with the Christian message. And if you're in a Christian school, and I can recommend the 3, and I'll just hold this one up.
Well, this one's for those of you who are listening and not looking.
It
says How Christians Can Succeed Today, and the subtitle is Reclaiming the Genius of the Early Church. Yeah. So you said there's a series of 3?
Yeah, this is the third. This is the third.
This is the third in the trilogy.
Yeah, there's a couple. But
sure. But I'm sure if you look up Greg Sheridan, you can find it.
Yeah. And any one of them is worth reading. And if you are in a Christian school, he really very well sums up the situation. In Australia now, we're about half. The census says people have no religious affiliation.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think he deals with that question very well. Yeah. And if you're in a Christian school, you're going to have students from that background. So that's why I think it's a good book.
He writes also for the Australian and...
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
So if you ask me there, I would say there. I don't, as I say, I'm a bit out of it for the what other books, but always the journals are worth having.
Sure. All right. Okay. All right. So my last question, and this is what I ask all my guests, is there something that you think we've missed that you would probably like to mention now?
I always counted it as a privilege that I was able to go to New Guinea for 15 years and to go to Grace College for 30 years. That was a privilege. Mm-hmm. A privilege.
Okay. All right. Well, we might finish there. We could go for a while. And I'm also conscious that the last thing I wanted to do was to reiterate and go word for word over. But we have broadly touched on some of the questions from this publication. Yeah. And the publication I'm holding up is Fred W. Stolz, A Tribute to the Master Craftsman, which was an interview I did back in 2009. Yeah. And again, if you missed it at the start of the episode here, I'm going to make a PDF available in the episode notes and my website for anyone who wants to access that so they can have a look at it. But we've broadly touched on the themes. Like I intentionally wanted to keep away from asking the same type of questions, but I wanted to kind of look at educational leadership and associated questions from that. So anyway, well, we could go for a while here, and I'm conscious I want to keep this to about an hour. Yeah. And as it is, we're probably we've gone over an hour anyway. Yeah. But so I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for letting me interview you on my podcast. And for those who are listening or watching this, I'm going to say thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe.